Good morning, Central Texas. Welcome to Community Connections on KISS 103.1. I'm Phyllis Jones, your host, and we got a cool show today. I have two men on the show who could probably talk 4 hours. I'm just saying. I'm just saying. You know, they could. I didn't say me. It won't be me because I'm the quiet one. Anyway, they could talk for 4 hours, but we're going to have a terrific show. This is Black History Month. Now, we do know that Black History is 365. But during Black History Month, what I really want us to do is get those conversations. You know, those conversations that make us say ouch to each other. You know, those conversations where, you know, somebody backs you into a wall and you either give or dance. So, and those who know what I mean, what I know what I say, you either give in or dance. You know, and I don't know how to dance, so
all I do is this.
We're doing the bump. We ain't doing
So, and this morning, the topic I chose, somebody else gave it to me, one of my elders. She got Miss Green. Miss Green is the first African-American teacher in Austin ISD. And she's the one who gave me the topic because I was talking to her. I talk to our elders a lot because they have the wisdom that we need to move forward. So I was talking to her, telling her I needed a topic that we don't never cover. I wanted a topic that does cause us to say ouch. Because it caused a division within us, started in 1850, oh boy, and some of that division is still happening today. So she gave me the topic. But before we get in there, I will give a Black history fact. My facts will always come from the city that I live in, which is Killeen. So I'll say in 1976, a man named Levi Belfour decided to open up Belfour's Menswear in 1976. Belfour's Menswear is still open today. And the unique thing about it is he's still in the same place. I mean, because, you know, most businesses, first of all, some of our businesses don't survive. And there's many reasons why they don't survive. I'm never going to say because we didn't support it. Due to a lot of reasons, some of our businesses don't survive. But Levi has been there since 1976, same location. And, in fact, I just want to say it because it's hilarious. I think he still wears the same measuring tape around his neck.
yeah, right.
Because every time I see him, I swear it's the same one, you know, and I'm dying to give him a new one, but, you know, that probably wouldn't work. But he's the first. So I would say anybody that wanted to open a business similar to his. Not any business. I would say we need to go and talk to Levi to find out the success and how he managed to stay. So today, he is my Black History fact. And like I said, my guest is Troy. Good morning, Troy. How are you?
Good morning. I'm fine.
And
Happy
Troy was on my show last month for Martin Luther King Day. And Troy, I should tell you, we had people searching for the topic. People had never heard of that speech of Martin Luther King, never heard of that story. They never heard of none of it. So that was new to a lot of people.
Good.
So we sent people on a search to figure out what else did they know? Because everybody knows I have a dream, but no one knew about that one. Nobody knew. So we sent people on the search, and that's what I always intend to do. I don't want to talk about anything that everybody else talk about because it's no more fun, and and learning has to be fun.
Right.
It should always be fun. So Ray is part of my Under One Roof family. Good morning, Ray. How you doing?
Good morning, and happy Black History Month to everybody, and you too, my lady.
Thank you, because we used to go to Under One Roof, and now we found out Troy used to go there.
Oh, yeah.
But, you know, that was the store you went in at 12, and who knows when you left.
Right.
Because as you were buying your book, you were listening to the conversation, and you either stopped to learn or you stopped to join in. Or either you did the other thing, you stopped to be re-educated.
Right. They say you never left there uneducated. That's for sure.
Yeah.
Definitely.
And on Friday night,
Oh, gosh.
we put out the bean pies and some poetry, and it was a
Long night.
Yes.
It was a long night.
So we belong to that powerful family, and I'll say powerful because none of us can say nothing negative about our Under One Roof family. You know, we all walk away with, oh, yeah, I got it today. You know, because all of us, we all got to beat down. We all said something wrong and got to beat down. And the beat down was still a learning lesson. It was of love, but we had fun. But this morning, we're going to talk about something that affects us still today, and it's migration. So we're going to talk about the African-American migration and what culture changes it caused us. Many of us don't realize that the migration caused us a lot of strife. It was a lot of good, but it was a lot of things that we would never think of that actually happened. Because you got to figure, during those times, the man was the head of the family, African man. He was the head of the family. He decided, let's move, not move. But just think, this same man, first of all, came here to the United States by force, and he was made into a slave. And he was told to forget everything he learned at home. And he was traumatized. And then to live in the United States, but specifically in the southern states where slavery was, and then to find out there's another place on the other side of the United States, which would be the north, where things were different. And so he had to make up his mind to leave my family here, or do we move? Well, that was a culture change, and there was another, I guess, issue that he had to overcome, because moving from south to north, as we know, even today, it's still a big change. So just think of what he had to go through. And also, not only did we move from south to north, we moved from south to Haiti. That was another place we went to. And with Haiti, we were fortunate to take our religion, actually, I won't say religion, we took our spiritual beliefs with us, because we took with us voodoo. Well, actually, it's voodoo.
Man,
Ray, like, oh,
I don't want to cut you off. We literally just had, last week, just had this conversation about voodoo.
That is not evil.
Right.
Yes.
It's not negative, because it was always given a negative concept, because people thought voodoo was a religion.
Yes.
And I'm telling you, man, it's funny that you brought. Just last week, we had this conversation about voodoo, how people misunderstood it, and I had to break it down to them that you can take anything and make it look bad. That's what they did. They took it to make it look
bad.
Voodoo as a bad thing. So now you look evil. People look evil with voodoo, and they made it like it was our religion when it wasn't. Right. And that's what the concept became. And I had to tell them. I said, and I was talking about it, because I said, well, if that's the case, the swastika that Hitler had, was actually a Japanese piece that was actually meant love and happiness, but he took it and turned it to that swastika.
Right.
So you can't just take an image and think, oh, just because it's now used as that's what it is. And it was just funny that you said that.
Every
so
time we see it, it's a negative
concept, right? And that's what they did with voodoo,
right?
Because voodoo wasn't that at first.
No.
Voodoo was actually more of a ritual when people thought witch doctors used it as healing at a time.
Right.
It wasn't a religious thing.
Right.
It was more of a spiritual healing thing. But then you don't understand something. We got to make it look evil or bad. So that's what that. So yeah, I didn't want to cut you off.
It's okay.
Yeah, it just happened.
That's okay, because it's all in here. It's all in there. Because also about Haiti is we were taught that it was evil, so we won't never go. Because Haiti is a rich soil.
Yes.
Yeah, so to keep us away, you just make it evil, and because till today you hear no one saying I'm going on vacation to Haiti. Everybody, you say that, they're going to go, oh, do you know?
Do you have family there? There's got to be a reason you're going to Haiti for a vacation.
That's true. That's true. But no, that still stays in what we're talking about, because it deals with migration, of us moving from one place to the other. So, yes, we're going to start out with, we know it began like in, it's written that it began in 1850, where we did move from one place to another. So, Ray, you want to kick it off?
I wanted to go back to what you were saying about how men, especially during slavery, during the migration, you also had to think that a lot of men were stripped of their manhood.
Yes.
So the problem with that was not only did they have to relearn how to become a man when they left, because again you was never given those skills when you was a slave. They took all that away. So when you say they had to decide whether to leave their family or as they didn't think like a man. They thought like a slave. Their thought was, you know, do I want to stay here or do I need to go and get better or become a man? And it wasn't more or less I was leaving my family. It wasn't more or less that I was leaving my family. It was more the fact that how do I become this man that I need for my family. And so that's when a lot of men left, it was to make their family better, not necessarily leaving them, but becoming the man they need to be for them. And a lot of us don't look at it like that because, again, you're right. You had to make a decision. You know, your family. Not only did you have to leave, but you had to sneak away. It wasn't like you just packed your bags up, you know, and got on a horse and buggy and was like, Master, I'm out. You know, I'll be back in a few days to pick up the family, but I got to go get this job. And, you know, and at that time, for migration, you know, they were sharecroppers. Right. You had the tent farming and all that other stuff. So they tried to talk about it wasn't slavery, sharecropping, and tent farming. If you an indentured servant, you a slave.
You're a slave. Yeah.
So okay, like my grandfather said, you can put lipstick on it, it's still a pig. So in that, you know, so our culture changed. Our culture changed, I think, with our names. Because when we left, you know, I think we left Africa and they restricted us of our name. Right. And they gave us this. And then when we went to the north, we had to change our name again. So again, identity was a problem with us. Because you literally have to build up who you are or who that name, what you want that name to become. So to me, I think that's when our culture changed through our names. Because again, how many men can have their name stripped and build itself back up? You know how many men have a name and then and they're still going today. Because you might have a name today, you have a number tomorrow. You strip that name away and they give you a number. And then they want you to build that name back up when you get back out. It's the same thing. It's the same type of culture that we have going on. They strip your name and then now you got to move back to the north and you got to build up and they give you a whole new name when you get to, you don't have a slave name. They give you a whole new name. So now you got to build that up. Then you got to come back and get your family. And now they got to learn this new name, you know, and come back, you know. So to me, I think a lot of that culture change came with the stripping of our name and our manhood at the time.
So Troy, when the families did start moving, and we know the men did it first, what did they have to, on the way there, what did they have to adapt to? I mean, this is on the way. They're not even getting there yet, but
well, you know,
it's on the way.
Well, basically, because we already knew that in the South you had all the Jim Crow laws and you had black codes and all that, which restricted the black family, not only the black man, but black woman, and the kids as well. So when you're moving from one spot to another on the way, you'd have to adapt to some of this newfound freedom that you're not used to. And like you were saying, that mindset, you have to change that mindset. Okay, now I'm no longer in the South where I'm constricted. Yes, there are some rules and regulations in the North, but not as much as in the South. Because in the South, the disenfranchisement of the black man and the black family was just predicate. That was it. That was rules and laws that say, hey, you can only do this, and you're only going to get this much education, you can only work. And when I think about the South and the disenfranchisement of the black man and the black woman, I think of the movie The Help. Right. Because you know, we're going to keep you in this economic state because you know you're no longer a slave, but we're gonna make you as close to being a slave as we can by limiting those things that you can do, right. Like the 7th grade education they had and cleaning houses and things of that nature, because they needed you. Mm-hmm. They needed you, you know, because they weren't trying to do all that. So again, let's change it back to on the way to say like Chicago or Philly or Detroit or Pittsburgh, they had to learn, okay, we're in a different type of environment now. We have to get used to that. And now, like you were saying, different names was going back into 1850, like you were saying, because you changed your name because they're looking for you, especially if you were a runaway slave. Right. You know you had to change names now because they're looking for you under this different name. So now there's another identity, if you were saying, and then learning to be that man again because, yes, in slavery, stripped of everything. Because that was their whole thing. you know, we're not make you feel like a man. And today it's like, do you not understand that how to feel to have your wife and your kids taken away from you, and there's nothing you can do? Powerless. Being powerless is the worst feeling you can feel in this world as a man. Being powerless, especially in front of your family.
Right.
And that carried on to like the 19, the 20s and 30s and 40s and 50s. You still had to somewhat watch yourself as a black man. And so, when they moved north, some of those freedoms that they never had, they started to gain, and that's a different feeling. And I know, I don't know because I wasn't there, but just being able to adapt to that probably took the young black male time. Definitely took him time to understand I don't have to be that timid black man. Now, I don't have to go on the other side of the street if I see somebody of different color coming. I can look this person in the eye to a certain extent. I can be a man. And I know, I just have to imagine how long it took African American men back then to really grasp that and say, okay, I am a man. Mm-hmm. I am a man. Even though there's some limitations still, I'm still a man. I'm a man now. So, moving from the south to the north was a greater adjustment from not only the black man, but the black family as well, because they had more opportunities in the north.
So for both of you, so not only, I'll say this was change for them, number 3, because change 1, you leaving your homeland. Right. In Africa, we have our own beliefs. We knew who we were, where we came from, and we knew way more than the oppressors thought we knew. We knew more than the oppressors knew, actually, because our history was 2,000 years BC, and they're dealing with AD.
They do. That's a whole other type of knowledge. That's
we ain't gonna have that. But if we had that show, the 3 of us would no longer be living in Texas.
Yeah. But that in itself was a reason why they stripped. Because as you said, knowledge is power.
Right.
And you keep that knowledge from them, and they have no power. And my thing was my problem was always, it wasn't necessarily the adult male, but the young male. How do you become a man when you can't see your father as one?
Right.
You see what I'm saying? Like you can come and tell me something, but I look up and I see mama being dragged somewhere, and you can't stop that.
Screaming for help, and
you can't do nothing about it. I got whipped, for playing with the little white girl, and you could not stop that.
Exactly.
How, as a young man, and then you go up to the north. You got to think now. You took your family to the north, and them still the same eyes. And as you said earlier, now you still struggling to become that man. But I think it helps when everybody else sees you as a man. But how does that young man, and then that's where the development, as again, the culture changes, the development changes, because how do I not see you still as that man back then, to now? And that's another, that on the way, because again, like you said, when you traveling up that road up north,
right,
there's a lot of things you get, and you got to go through, and then again, it's like, I just can't see. I know growing up, like I said, I didn't have a father, so I had my grandfather.
Right.
So even after he passed, I still had a man, and I still knew what a man was
through him.
Right. So I had that. Even though it was young when he passed away, I still had the image of what a man was. So, but to not have it as a child, that's tremendous to me. That's even more overpowering than not knowing what your name is. You don't even know what a black man, because you see your father, but you don't see a man.
Right.
You see what they have made
them
him
into
to be.
Yeah.
And that to me basically comes with the village. I guess that's where the village mentality comes in, that where, say, like if you go up north, I would hope to think that they would have known somebody. Oh, well, this person's there, or this person less. Yeah, that's why I said I hope they would know somebody, so they would get, because some of the railroads sent for black families. And so when you get there, you might say, well, hey, okay, let's hook up with Mr. John. He's from.
What they would do is they had what they call an interpreter. They had a liaison.
Yeah.
And so when you got there, what they would do is they had people to integrate you into this. So they'd be like, okay, we gonna hey, can you guys take them and
Show
them
them,
right? And that's what they
around
did there because migrating, they know they just
Detroit
knew
or
they just knew
whatever.
they just knew jobs was
Right.
up there.
Yeah.
We gonna go get them.
Mhm.
But wherever you went, like Philadelphia, like I said, Detroit, Chicago, wherever, they always had a
Yeah,
liaison.
yeah.
So when you got there, that that's the guy that changed your name.
Right.
That's the guy that gave you a job. That's the guy that gave you, wherever you was going to live, and that's what his job was, to make sure that you integrated and properly into
Mr. John.
Mr. John,
And he did give you a place to stay.
And that's what the thing was, because you didn't know nobody. It wasn't like you had a phone and be like, hey, let me call my brother and see what he's doing. Hey, bro, we on our way up.
Yeah.
So it was difficult. It's difficult.
And I say that because there was two periods of that migration. Like 1916 up until 1930, which World War I caused that, and then again in 1940. So that second migration made hopefully some of the people that was still migrating after the 40s, new people in Chicago, or family members, because I know everybody couldn't come that first trip around, and some families did. Everybody took everybody, and some didn't. Some would go and work, and they saved the money and send it for grandma and grandpa and uncles and aunties and kids or whatever, and maybe they came up in that second turnaround, and then now we're in Chicago, and here comes the village, because we're basically living all in the same probably housing area. I'm gonna say it like that.
Yeah.
And so now I've been here for 5 or 6 years, and so I know everybody here, and everybody knows me. And now I incorporate my family or whomever I sent for, or whoever made it this time. You're a big family because you're part of the village. And so as you were talking about culture earlier, as the education got better and the jobs got better, so did the cultural images and cultural things that African Americans were able to do now, because they had more freedom.
That's how Green got started.
Was that?
Yeah, that's how Green got started.
Right,
in Chicago,
Because of the migration. Because, like you said, the second part of the migration was the essential part. Like, everybody had moved. The first part was everybody moving north.
Right.
But the second part was, okay, now we have to form these villages, these towns, these, because of the economic structure, you had a job, but you still wasn't getting paid the same.
Right.
You still wasn't getting the same money. So you had to put all your money into certain things. So they made towns, they made infrastructures, and Green was actually one of, and Harlem.
Yeah.
Harlem was another one, that's how we got the Harlem Renaissance.
Right.
Which showcased the talents, the abilities, the skills of black culture, black people, women, men. It wasn't just the men. It was women, men. That's what Harlem Renaissance did for us.
Right.
And that's where the word project started coming from.
Right. Because it was a project.
It was
actually a project.
It was a project.
Yeah.
And they call them projects because they built these
projects
for them to encage them.
Right.
But the door was still open. You know what I'm saying? You didn't want you to think you was locked in here. But that's what this was built for. To keep you guys. We're gonna let you come up here. Let's build this right here to keep y'all. We don't want y'all going. You just
work uptown.
Yeah, you come on here. We ain't gonna stop y'all from coming up. But we gonna build this right here so y'all can just we'll keep y'all right here. And so and again, go back to the culture. What you're saying, that everything about the migration changed us for the better.
Right.
But it kept us, like, my thing was, like, the first part of migration, I think, kept us mentally enslaved.
Yes.
It wasn't until, like I said, the second part of the migration where we started building our own infrastructures is where the mentality started changing, where we seen ourselves as doctors and musicians and lawyers. Once we started seeing ourselves in society other than just mill workers and the extra hands and all that other stuff, when we started seeing ourselves in the industry is when I think that's when the mental part started changing for us.
Okay, Troy.
Yes.
The Quakers, what part did they play?
They played a vast part in migration north, because they always had. They were part of the Underground Railroad and all of that. So they were always willing to help the African American out, because they didn't really necessarily see them as inferior to them. And so they, at that juncture of migration, they were there, especially in Philadelphia. in Pittsburgh, in that area, because they were there also. They have a great Quaker establishment in Philadelphia, if I'm not mistaken. So they were always there to play that pivotal role to help the African American person out. Like I said, from getting education to schools to colleges, they played a great role in that. And that's where, like the man said, changing came from. When you have better opportunities, your mindset now can expand from that role you used to have in the South. Because as we grew as people and started to live in these areas, such as, again, Philadelphia and Detroit and Pittsburgh and New York and Harlem and Chicago, we start our culture change because we have now, our eyes are more wide open as far as the things that we can do. Sports, politics, music, we start to become more expressive. And as we become more expressive, we found things like from blues, we took blues and made it jazz. And now from jazz, we're making it R&B. As our minds expand, so that we as a people, like I said, we started looking at being doctors and lawyers and things, because we had to, basically, because for a while we only had us.
Right.
We had that Wall Street and things of that nature, where Black Wall Street and Tulsa and all that, because we had to have our own. And how was that going to happen? We had to get educated. We had to rely on one another. And they were part of it because their system was to treat us as equal as they could by opening up schools to educate African Americans and things of that nature back in that time, especially during the Underground Railroad. They were part of that as well. So they have always been there for the advancement of the African American people back in the day. So we, as African Americans, can say, hey, we owe them a great thanks as well for participating in us advancing, because there were other people to help us advance along the way. We just didn't do it by ourselves.
Right. Okay, now that other group of people that used to go and capture us and bring us back, which was our Native Americans.
I was going to say, with
Come on, Ray.
Indians,
That's what I said.
yeah, because I was going to say, first off, which one you talking about?
That's what I'm like.
Okay,
okay. Come on, Ray. Because we need to talk about that, because too many of us.
You know, and I promise you, I'm not lying to you. We talked about this last night. We was actually talking about this last night at the spot. And because I got a friend of mine, he from Florida, he a Seminole, and I was teasing him about how the Seminoles. I said, did you know that the Seminoles was slave trackers?
Yes.
The white man would actually hire Seminoles to track down runaway slaves and barter with them. What they would do is, if they track down 5 slaves, we give you 2 of them. You get to keep 2 slaves, and then we got the other 3. Or if it was just 1, we barter something with you. They give them money or whatever to track the slave down. But they actually own slaves, and then they would use these slaves to actually help track other slaves down. And again, which again goes back to a mentality where, where we see another black man, and instead of uplifting them, we doing something right, because that was a mentality. Now it's like, I gotta go track my brother down, and then but then it comes to a point where you thought that was your job.
Yeah.
And what people don't understand is during the Underground Railroad, they had black trackers doing Underground Railroad to track down, people and that meant, again, but that's when that go back to that mentality of, we stripping you down so you don't see them as your people. Because guess what? Now, because I'm feeding you. I done gave you some clothes.
Right.
I done put a coin in your pocket. So now we in this together.
Right. Yep. Yeah.
We sick.
Yeah.
we ain't in, we in this together. So and with the Indians, it was the same way. We barter with you. We gonna give you this, or we not gonna come and terrorize your land, but we need you to do this. We're not gonna come in here and rape and pillage your women, so we need you to do this. And it became, and that was part of the barter. Okay, we're not gonna send this army in here to ravage your village. We need you to, because again, they that's what they did. And that what it was good. They was trackers.
Yeah.
But and it was necessary. They wasn't tracking us at the time. But when I got an army, I could say, hey, I need 3 slaves tracked. What you gonna do? I got this army sitting at the base of your camp. But you know what you gonna do? Like, oh, 3? Okay, I got you. You know, and so, but there was Indian, but they were Indian. You had Blackfoot, you had Seminoles, you had Cherokee, you had oh my God, oh goodness, another something called, oh man, I can't think of another one, but it was 4 major tribes that you had,
right,
who they actually use on a regular basis in order to track slaves.
And also, people need to know that's where scalping came from.
Yes,
we were the ones that got scalped. That's
we the ones that actually originally got scalped.
They paid for that.
Paid for that.
Yep.
They literally paid because they wanted it. Well, it depends on if they wanted you back alive or dead.
Right.
You know, but because it depends on how they wanted you. But if they wanted you, and that's all you had to show them.
Yes, proof.
Prove that. So I got the scalp, and that's where scalping came from. That literally.
Yeah.
And people always think that, oh, well, they can no. That's if you a history person or you. Don't let, and that's why I would say, don't let somebody tell you something. Just like we talking on the radio. If you don't believe what I'm telling you, look it up.
That's right. Yeah.
If you don't believe that this actually happened, look it up. And because I've had that. I've had people arguing about, oh, Indians were just bad. No. I mean, and I didn't say they did it because they wanted to, but again, it's a system that's put in place to where it's survival. Yeah. It's like, okay, it's either you gonna wipe out my camp or my people, or we got to go track these people down. Okay, we got to do that because actually, the Seminoles actually integrated their blacks into their camp.
Yeah,
they wasn't you know they wasn't slaves. But they were part of their village, and they became trackers just like Indians. You know, so that's where you get the good hair. Girl, that's my baby. You know, that's the Indian in me.
Yeah. We always say that.
That's the Indian in me.
I guess I had none of that in there.
DNA test, and this is something else.
It's something else. You know, but that's the Indian in me. But yeah, so to me that it wasn't necessary. It was just like again, people don't like even when runaway slaves, they are other slaves to track down a slave. It wasn't necessarily they wanted to do something, but that's how they was retrieved. So a lot of times it wasn't, white man never fucking, again, like we go back to knowledge. He ain't that smart.
No.
Literally, they wasn't that smart to track a brother. But they use other people
to track who they need.
But and they do it today. It's called outsourcing. That's the name of it now. It's called outsourcing. I don't know how to do this, so guess what I'm gonna do? We're gonna hire these people here, outsource them to run this business for me, and it's still the same thing. Because again, don't let them fool you. They got the commercials they have, all these books they write. Best believe they got information from somebody else.
Right. That's right.
It's always been that way.
And again,
always used other people's things to advance themselves because they're the superiority thing that they like to talk about. They've never been that way. They've never been that way. No. But they just had the power to make you feel that way. And if you're not smart enough to recognize it, then you're going to always think that this is always true. Because again, like you said, research and read, and you'll find out that a lot of stuff they take credit for, and we know, especially Black history, we know they didn't have anything to do with it.
That's true.
I sit here and watch TV shows growing up with my parents, and they watching these old Western, which I do today because I'm just like that with them. And you'll see a white person you know is Black.
Right.
Yep. Wait a minute, hold on. That dude was Black. He wasn't white.
Like the long, like
they'll do that. If you let them, they'll get away with that. They will in place a Black person or a Spanish person or someone of color with their own just to take credit for it. It's like you said, the same thing tracking blacks. That's that divide and conquer mentality. You can't trust one another, and that kind of filters over today a little bit. Yeah. You divide and conquer, and I got them. Because as long as I let them gather and long as I let them put their heads together, they're going to come up with a plan to escape, or they're going to come up with a plan to kill me and my people, or whatever. So,
so I'm going to feed one of them.
Right.
I'm going to feed one.
Somebody going to snitch. Somebody
going
to snitch. Yeah. Somebody going to be, we got to get one of them on our side. So he can tell us or she can tell us what's going on, because we ain't smart to figure this out. Right. Because they know when they went to Africa and captured slaves or bought slaves or whatever the case may be, they saw what they saw over there.
Mm-hmm.
They know who built this, and they know who did it.
Shit.
You know, just like, you know, things that D.C. and all this who slaves built, you know, and Benjamin Banneker and all of that stuff that we study, you know, when you build in D.C. by knowledge only,
right?
I mean, by your memory, and you doing different things, and see, that's what I'm saying. That was the way they've always treated us, divide and conquer. But now they kind of see it, you know, okay, everybody's getting a little smarter now. And like we talked about on the last show with Georgia, you know,
yes.
But that's a little different story. But you
hey.
see it coming back, you know, that migration coming back down this way. So,
Yeah,
but that's a little bit far ahead. But, it, you know, like I said, that divide and conquer has always been what they have used. Because not only did they use black to attract blacks, but we see it also Indians attract Indians.
Yeah.
And whomever else they need. Because they're smart enough to do all that.
Right.
So they use other cultures to do their dirty work. And like you said today, they still do it.
I want to jump on that, expand on that a little bit. Like I was teaching when my son was here. He went to the middle school here in Killeen, and one of the you know, that every Black History they have them do this whatever Black History project,
right? Yeah.
On the regular, and I hate to say regular Black History, but
right.
The one that everybody knows,
yeah,
the
right, yeah.
So my son came home and he was like, "Dad, they want me to do." I said, "No, we're not doing that." He said, "Well, Dad, they said." I said, "No, it says here. If you read it, it says you can do a project on that. They just want you to do on it because again, this is what you know."
Yes,
and they know.
Yeah. So I said, "No, this is what we're gonna do." So I did a board for them on Black inventors.
Oops.
On
What? Oops.
Inventors. And my son, he was like, "Dad, you sure?" Because my dad was like, I said, "Yeah, this is what we're gonna do." So we put this whole thing together. I mean, it was gorgeous. It was a big old thing, 3D aspect, whole nine. So he took it to school, and they were supposed to, like when you take it to school, they're supposed to hang them up, you know, for people to see and everything. Well, he took it to school, and he came home. I asked him, because, you know, I said, "Son, how'd the project go?" He said his teacher told him, and this is the honest God truth, she said that I was lying about half the things on that board.
Ooh.
You had no look. You had no idea. And first, you know me, you know who I am. You know, public. That ain't what you want.
Yeah.
I'm gonna tell you that. I ain't talking probably one in your life. So I said, "What you say?" He said, "Well, my teacher said some of these are not true." Well, I know. I don't even know if I drove. I don't even know. I don't even know if I drove to the school. I just know I looked up and I'm right here. Yeah. You know, it's like, okay. So I went to the school and, because again, you know, my son was like, I said, we got to go.
Right.
I don't even know.
Yeah.
So the problem she had, there was two things the problem she had. You know who Lewis Lattimore is?
Yes.
All right. For those who don't know who Lewis Lattimore is, Lewis Lattimore actually invented what they call a flint. For the light bulb.
Right.
The schools will tell you that Thomas Edison invented the light bulb.
Right.
But what they don't, Thomas Edison invented the light bulb. What they don't tell you is that light bulb only stood on for 10 seconds at a time. Mm-hmm. So Thomas Edison went into the patent. He went to the patent department, and he found a patent for a flint that would help his light bulb. But instead of stealing the patent, he actually hired Lewis Lattimore, which was a black inventor, but because at that time blacks couldn't have patents, so they would hold them in this what they call the patent department, and so Thomas Edison actually hired him to help him fix the light bulb, and it was because of the flint that he developed. That's where the light bulb stays on now. Mm-hmm. But they don't teach you about Lewis Lattimore in schools. No. They'll make you believe that Thomas Edison made this light bulb, you turn it on, and now you got GE. You know, like, hey, you know, like, wait a minute, he just did everything. Like, wait a minute, no, that light bulb will blow out after 10 seconds. So that was Lewis Lattimore and Elijah McCoy.
Oh, gosh, yes.
And Elijah McCoy, and that's what the term, the real McCoy.
Yeah.
Right. So she had a problem, I guess, because she didn't believe that. She didn't know. That's why she never knew. She didn't know that. Because again, they don't teach you that. You know. So I went up there, right, and I'm heated. So I called the principal, and everybody knows. Mind you, now everybody knows me at all my kids' school.
Right.
And I tell you, every teacher, literally, I always make myself, I'm there. So we sitting there, so I go and I told him what happened. He was like, no, I can't. I said, first of all, don't sit and tell me my son's a liar, because now you're gonna sit there and my son lying.
Right.
Yeah,
Now that's a bigger problem.
Now you really
Yeah.
making me mad.
Yeah. So we got the teacher, and the teacher sat there and looked me in my face and said, I've done a lot of reading and I've never heard of that before. I said, well, you need to change your books in. And I told him, I said, I hope these ain't the same books that you're teaching kids with.
Right.
Right.
Because evidently you have no clue of what you're doing. And so they suspended her for like 2 weeks. But the whole thing was the fact that, what I was talking about before, they don't have the knowledge that we think they do.
Correct. Right.
And just like that, just like with Lewis Lattimore, when they don't, guess what they do? They outsource.
Right.
Some of us, most of them steal it, but in Thomas Edison's thing, he actually hired
Did it right.
Lewis Lattimore. He did it properly. He hired him to help his work. But most of them at the time, they stole a patent, and they would just add one or two things, and now it's yours.
Right.
Right.
Instead of, and at that time, we shoot, how many things that we invented
Right.
that you would never, that you didn't know about, because guess what? We had to submit those patents.
Yes.
And then they'll be like, oh no, this ain't gonna work, this is not blah blah, whatever excuse they gave them, you black, whatever the excuse was,
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
they put it away. But then they turn around and sell it to another inventor, and I'm using air quotes, everyone can't see me. Inventor, and they add one or two things to it, and now they invented this here, or whatever it was, and that was again
Right.
another culture thing that came with the migration, because people don't understand how many brilliant people came up, but because we couldn't shine,
Right.
half the stuff that would have made us great in those 1920s or 30s, and before that Harlem Renaissance came along, would have started earlier.
Right.
But we couldn't have that, because again, you was afraid of that knowledge. You was afraid that if I make him an inventor, or if I make him a doctor, he gonna make somebody else a doctor.
Right. He gonna be smart.
He gonna be smart to tell. He gonna teach somebody else.
Right.
He gonna go and have a school, and we can't have it. We can't have it.
Right.
So we gonna make sure. Yeah, he has a 7th grade. 7th grade was the highest at the time.
Exactly.
You can literally go to as a black person.
All right.
We talked about that last week.
You couldn't go past 7th grade.
That's right.
And so, but that was to keep you that knowledge at a level to where you couldn't be. Not only didn't you wasn't better than me, but you didn't feel better than me. You didn't think you had, because guess what? You think I went to college, you smarter than me.
Yep.
So guess what? Now I got a 7th grade education. He went to college. I can't be smarter than him. And that's the mentality that we had. That's why I said that. That's why I was saying like that. The second part of the migration was the mental aspect of it, because once we got past that. Wait a minute, I'm smarter than you. wait a minute now. I can figure this out. Like, wait a minute, this ain't as hard as I thought it was. And that's when the change became. It literally. And then guess what? We started teaching each other.
Right. Yeah,
we started showing each other a skill. We started passing stuff down to each other. We started handing stuff over to each other. We started building each other up. And that's the most important thing. We started building each other up, saying, you know what, you can be that. Wait a minute, you an attorney? How can I be an attorney? And not like now where I say, hey, how can I get down? Well, see, I had to go through you don't know what see back then in the Harlem Renaissance was like, hey, how can I?
We all in the same.
I'm gonna give you a card. Yeah. I'm gonna go talk to my man's over at what's name. He'll fix you up. He'll get you right. Back then it was bam. And see now, and I said, but the culture change again is to me, like especially with, like I said, with the migration, it was more mental, because again we had to refigure, like I don't know how many times we had to refigure who we were, like understand where we came from, and that's another thing, because our lineage you know, how do you track a lineage down when we change names 3 or 4 times?
All right. Okay, Troy.
And it's misspelled and
Oh boy, yeah.
you know.
Okay, Troy. We're gonna the same man right here, all right, who was beat, whipped, had to walk around with whatever and however, trying to figure out day to day was he gonna live to the next day. So we're gonna take the same man who decided, you know what, telling this family I'm gonna chance it because we know it was a chance. Migration was a chance. So he's gonna now take a chance to just go. So we know he didn't just start walking from, I'm going to say it the correct way. He didn't walk from Georgia to Detroit because it wasn't Detroit at that time. Detroit. Detroit belonged to Canada. People don't know that, but Michigan was a village. It wasn't a state yet. Canada, Detroit belonged to Canada. And the church that people went through then, Canada, is now in Detroit, and it's a black church. Okay. It's at the Cono. But anyway, those who went from, I'll say, Georgia to Detroit had to avoid the Native Americans, had to go to the Quakers and move on. So what kind of mentality did they have to go through? Because they had to be a whole bunch of different people in order to get to their destination.
Well, along the way, there's just like the Underground Railroad. There were some people you could trust and some people you couldn't trust. It's kind of like, if you ever, I forgot the name of the movie, what they said about the fishnet, which was the communication system back then, and you look at it and you go, okay, I know this is what I can do and this is what I can't do. This is what I need to stay away from, and these are the people that could help me, and these are the people that I needed to fear. Kind of like a runaway slave. You kind of knew that, okay, I had to stay away from this area, and I could depend on these Quakers or these Mormons or whoever, since they would be there, leave the light on and whatnot, to show them this was a safe place. And along the way, that migration, especially during the slavery time, you knew you had to follow those certain protocols to get where you needed to go. Now, we talk about the 1916s when the migration started. In that period, you basically had, like we said, railroads sending for you. You basically had, if you had to walk away, if you had to catch a train, we called it hoboing or whatever the case may be, you got where you had to get to in order to get to Detroit or Chicago or Pittsburgh or New York. There and especially if you see now, you do research, you see sometimes there were people looking up with cars and they would all pile families in it together. So sometimes with the man, if the man decided he was going to go, he basically got there any way he could.
Right.
And sometimes back then, buses, but of course there were limitations with that in transportation. So if you had to walk a little while, that's fine. If you had to catch the bus or you catch the train, you knew there was ways that you could get to the north. Your problem just had to get there, and understanding that you basically couldn't trust anybody.
Right.
You had yourself, and basically if you had somebody with you, just looked out for one another.
But how did a man go from being beat on Monday, beat on Monday, and learned the other things that could have happened to him on Monday, and then Wednesday I'm going north? That's a mentality change like I don't know what, because he just got used to being beat, and he knows that they can beat them whenever they feel like it, and now all of a sudden I'm leaving, I'm going north.
Well, he never got probably used to it.
Yeah.
It was just mentality as I'm going to wait my shot, my chance.
Yeah.
Because I already know, and I've probably been in this village. We're all slaves here. I'm probably not the first person that tried to run away. Mm-hmm. So I'm learning from this guy, this young lady's mistakes if they got caught or whatnot, or the elders of the village, or those people that could steer me the right way, or whatever they had to rely on back then. Because you already knew the circumstances that were out there, dogs, slave catchers and whatnot. You knew what you had to do. You knew what was out there waiting on you.
Just other white people.
So, yeah. And other white people that, you couldn't trust. And so, when you're going from Monday to this to Wednesday or Saturday or whatever the day it was, and you made up your mind this is what you're going to do, you just said, hey, I got to take my chance. But I know what's out here because I know, especially if I've been in that plantation or been on that slave system for a minute, who tried to do what and if they got caught or they made it. Because like I said, they had their own lines of communication back there through the slaves. That's like we all had our slow down music in the fields and all of that. So we knew amongst each other who we could trust, who we couldn't, even though we couldn't read or write, but we had
Right.
our own communication system to say, hey, this is what you need to do. This because there was other white people. Some white you could trust and some you couldn't.
That's where
so you kind of knew.
That's where Wade in the Water came from.
Yeah.
Wade in the Water was an actual code to slaves to let them know where to go through the river, so
Right.
they can't track you through the river. That's where Wade in the Water came from. Like when you hear the song being sung, because that's what like a lot of slaves you were saying.
Right.
Like, Monday they it was they might have been a slave Monday, but they knew last week Wednesday is the day. It's like
Right.
but you knew you couldn't do nothing because guess what? They're not gonna kill you. They might beat you.
Right.
They don't kill your son.
Yeah.
They don't kill your wife. They're gonna do something to break you more because they feel if they beat you and I mean beat you.
Right.
Because a lot of times what they do is take the biggest guy
Yes.
and beat the teacher's life to teach everybody else.
Mhm.
But if they couldn't break you physically like that,
Right.
then guess what? We take your son, rape your daughter.
Mhm.
Mentally, that's worse. Because I
Yes.
can take it. You can do whatever you want to do to me. But I got children, I got a wife, and you do something to them that now I got to bend over, and take whatever you give me. So
Right.
again, at the time it was like, I'm gonna hold it out. Yeah, I can break your neck now. I'm gonna hold out because I got to get my family out of here. But yeah, at the time you had to. You literally, like I said, Monday. Yeah, I'm gonna keep that mentality.
Mm-hmm.
But Wednesday, when they get to singing, when I hear that song, it's time to go. I'm like, hey, okay, I'm gonna pick some kind today. I'm gonna pick about three lows. So you ain't gotta ask me to come out here none this week.
We can take that, even the movie Harriet. You look at it and yes, it's a movie, but
Right.
hopefully, it's close to the realization of what she did. She got to the north by any means necessary.
Mhm.
Let's just throw that in there. She did what she had to do, and and I can see that other people doing the same thing. Especially if you didn't have any transportation, you didn't have a horse, you didn't have anything. If the best way you could get there was to walk 400-500 miles,
Right.
that's what you had to
Walking
do.
Yeah.
400-500 miles.
Catching the wagon here, a lighthouse here, and somebody gave you a ride, and under on blankets or something, whatever, you did what you had to do to get there. And once you got there, and once you got settled, and like we said, the migration, then you started, okay, let's go back and get who we left.
Right.
Just like she went back and got who she left. Like I said, and then that period of between 1930 and 1940, that 10 years of what happened, the Great Depression come, and then everybody, the migration slowed down. I was thinking that 10 years, that money that you saved for mom and dad to come now, or brother and sister to come, and now, like we were saying, starting over mentality, 1940, because I've been down in the North 10 years, and now I know. Now it's better for my kids or my wife now, because now we can go to school. Yep. We can get past that 7th grade education. And we were saying, we talked about that last week, because I was telling her, man, my family, when I was growing up, I didn't know my grandmother couldn't read or write. And my aunts and uncles, because they grew up in the 20s and 30s, only had that 7th grade education. This is in West Texas, where I'm from. And my dad was the only one that graduated high school because he was the last one. He was the baby of the family. And so by the time he was growing up from 1939 to 1950, they didn't have a high school. But then when he grew up, they had a high school, but he had to drive the bus 20 miles to go to high school.
Right.
So that, when you said the 7th grade, and we were talking about that last show, that hit royally for me, because I never knew growing up they only had 7th grade educations. But now looking back at it, looking at the jobs that they held, ditch diggers, street sweepers, working at a cotton gin, pulling this and pulling that. And you wonder why your families, a lot of the males didn't live long.
Yeah.
They didn't live long because of all that stress and all of the stuff that they had to do to survive. That labor killed them. That labor pretty much killed them. And so when you go to the North now and you going, okay, we don't have to do this labor work that we did in the South. Now we become those lawyers and school teachers and doctors and things of that nature. Now we may live a little longer, and like you said, the village formed, and now we're teaching our kids that, hey, you don't have to be this. You can reach for the stars now. Even if it's in our own community, we still need doctors. We still need lawyers. We still need tax accountants. We need accountants. We need all of that. We need everything right here for us to survive.
But to pass on.
Right. We can break this segregation.
Yes.
And even that, I mean.
Because again,
that's another story.
That's a whole other show right
That's
there.
another show.
You know, so.
But I agree, and I would, like my grandparents. My grandmother was from Jersey, and my grandfather was from Virginia.
Oh.
So my grandmother was a school teacher, and my grandfather worked in a factory. And it was funny because you thought that, and I used to always think, because again, like you said, because of education.
Mm-hmm.
You know, my grandfather was in the Army. He was an Army man, and then he worked in a factory. You know,
right.
And that's what I seen. You know, he was just that man. He was just your man's man. You know, come home, he worked in a dye factory, so you know, he come home, you can smell him at the front door. You know, my grandma was school teacher, elementary school teacher. She was, PTA or the whole nine, education part. So so you see the difference of North and South. But it was funny that my grandfather passed away. We was cleaning out his attic, and we found these papers, found these drawings of houses developed, like architectural houses. Mm-hmm. And I'm sitting there like, who did this? I'm looking at like I'm trying to figure out who was doing all this.
Right.
Come to find out, my grandfather. He never went, because again, at the time, he knew how to do it, but he didn't feel he could become it.
Right.
Because of the mentality that, but tell the story, that's what I end up doing.
So, wait, hold on a minute. It's time for us to end this show. Okay. And as we see and hear, we're going to have to do the second part of this show. Because, and I had already kind of perceived that we were going to have to do it because of my two guests. I'm not saying anything negative about my guests. I have two great guests. But due to the conversation and if anybody, after this is over, and I'll say the second show is over, I challenge everybody to go read about migration, the Great Migration, because our whole life is in there. I mean, who we are today is in there. How we talk to each other today is in that migration. So I want to thank everyone for listening to KISS Community Connections this morning. I hope that you learned a lot and listen to us on the second half of the show, because we're going to talk about the migration and the remigration, why some went back. I can't understand, and I don't understand that one, and that's because my family wasn't part of the migration. I got kind of dropped in somewhere. But I want to, like I said, I hope everyone learned something today, and I want you to always remember, you cannot lead a positive life with a negative mind. We'll talk to you next Sunday.